And there have been further allegations from a former BBC contemporary of Stuart Hall who says he had a room set aside at BBC Manchester to entertain ladies. Linda McDougall, a producer working there at the time, claims his activities were widely known. In response, the BBC said, "We are aware of a number of allegations that have been made in relation to Stuart Hall, and where appropriate, these are being passed on to the police or the Dame Janet Smith review that is looking at the culture of the BBC during the 70s and 80s. In a separate development, the Coronation Street actor Bill Roache vowed today to fight allegations that he raped a 15-year-old girl in 1967. In a statement, he said, "I am astounded and deeply horrified by the extraordinary events of the last 24 hours. I strenuously deny the allegations and will now focus my full attention on fighting to preserve my innocence in the challenging times ahead." Well, joining me now in the studio is lawyer Liz Dux, who specialises in dealing with abuse cases and represents over 30 victims who were abused by Jimmy Savile. And in Salford is the Chief Constable of Cheshire Constabulary, David Watton, who heads up the Association of Chief Police Officers' work on child abuse. Now, the prosecutor in the Stuart Hall case made it pretty clear that it was the fact that there were stories that echoed each other from people who weren't connected that made the difference in this case. Is that crucial to these sorts of historic cases, that you need more than one complainant? Chief Constable.
Sorry, I didn't realise you were asking me.
Sorry, I should have said.
Crucial.
Yes.
It helps in terms of getting evidence together, because obviously in historic cases there often isn't forensic or other evidence, but it doesn't stop people coming forward just by themselves, and we will take all of these allegations really seriously. And I think today's public outcomes really are tantamount to the success and the way that we've moved forward in these areas. What's really key is that none of these victims came forward until after the publicity about Jimmy Savile. And it's this real belief by victims that they will now be believed that's making the biggest difference at the moment.
Well, what does that tell you about the naming of suspects? Is it crucial? And are you getting more information that way? Because yesterday we heard that ACPO is against the naming of suspects.
Now, what we are saying, and it came out a couple of years ago with the whole debate about naming rape suspects and other issues, is that we need to do it in a very, very careful and thought-through way that can help with bringing people forward who've been victims or witnesses, but also is done in ways that doesn't undermine potential prosecutions of really dangerous people who need to be brought to justice for what they have done, and also need to be brought to justice to protect them from affecting other people in future.
Well, so what does that mean for the policy and practice? Because some police forces are apparently deciding themselves not to confirm names of suspects when they are approached by the media. I mean, is there a policy in place now or not?
In terms of what we're doing at the moment, it really does have to be carefully thought through. We have senior investigating officers who have to look at the merits of their case and think about it as part of developing the evidence. Okay. Part of the investigation, and not just in terms of media profiles, but it's an integral part of how we actually bring people to justice.
Liz Dux, if this is about building up a picture from lots of different people that tell a story, because there's no physical evidence 30 years or 20 years on.
Yeah, that's right.
How important is it to you about how the police approach this and whether they name suspects?
Well, it is hugely important. We've seen from Savile that what was so important to the public was confidence that they were going to be believed, confidence that they weren't alone. And that's why, from a victim's point of view, the naming of a suspect is important. And in fact, the HMIC constabulary report following Savile did say how vital it was that victims in future were not left feeling isolated and that suspects were named.
Do you think something's changed?
Definitely.
In the last few months?
Definitely. There is a culture now that people, first of all, they don't feel that stigma anymore. I was contacted last week by a 64-year-old man who said, "I've lived alone in shame with this all my life, and it's only now I feel able to talk about it." People now feel able to talk about it, and it's important that the emphasis is not just on celebrity. Abuse is out there. It's still happening, and people now feel much more confident in going to the police, and today will, in fact, give them the confidence that convictions can be obtained.
Do you agree, Chief Constable, that something is changing, that attitudes are changing, both, well, I mean, primarily amongst people who have an allegation to make?
I'm really, really pleased with the way that not just victims are having confidence, but the attitudes within the whole of society are changing. I can still remember the debates before the programme was shown about Jimmy Savile, with people in the media and in public places just criticising how can you rake over these old things. Suddenly, when the detail came out, people's attitudes changed significantly. And I think pleading guilty today by Stuart Hall has again shown that it was really important that we deal with things no matter when they occurred, no matter who has been doing it. And I think this all builds confidence that people will come forward, we can then carry out proper detailed investigations, and we can bring more offenders to justice.
In these times of budget cuts, do you have the resources to go back now and examine these sorts of historic cases, given there might now be a lot more new evidence or people coming forward?
I think this is really a really important point. Some people have been talking about it, about historic cases, as though it's something that happened a long time ago and why is it really important now? Well, it's certainly not something that happened a long, long time ago for those victims who are still living with the consequences of it. We also have people, and you just look at the period of time within the Stuart Hall case for which he was offending, these people can be predators for a long, long time, and they may be still currently committing crimes and not just being brought to justice for recent allegations. So it really is important that we put the appropriate resources with specially trained officers and other support staff to make sure that we can deal with what is absolutely appalling crimes in our society.
Chief Constable Liz Dux, thank you both very much indeed.